Hey guys, Ben with Dissent Off-Road. We got a super exciting build we want to show you. Today we're going to dive into what we've done, the modifications we've done, but also just our initial impressions on the platform in general. So let's start right here in the front. We've got a brand new 2025 LX700h Overtrail. This is the Overtrail package, which means it's got front and rear lockers from the factory. So triple locked front rear center diff, which is amazing. First one since the 80 series in the US that gets a front locker. We've got the auto height control. So this is setting currently in its normal setting. So we'll talk about that and how we've fit the 37-inch tires. But let's dive in on the front here. We've got so with the Overtrail, this is the factory color, the earth color, I believe. We have wrapped it with a satin PPF, paint protection film. We towed this down to our friend Marvin at Beyond Wraps. He's the only one currently that I trust with our vehicles. Did a killer job. PPF is very hard to do. He removes panels. He knows his way around the Lexus, Toyota platform, any platform in general. Removes all the trim, wraps the corners, which most do not do on a PPF. I don't know how he does it, but he did it. He knocked it out of the park. So not only does that give it a cool look, it protects the paint. We've got our low pro front bumper. So we did kind of a different thing. We went aggressive on the tires, the wheels, and then we'll show you what we've got going underneath, and then went less aggressive on the bumpers. The goal was to create a very capable luxury off-road vehicle that can tackle just about any trail, but also be just at home in the city, driving in the highway, the urban life. And I think I'm pretty stoked with how it turned out. So low pro bumper. We've got all Baja Designs lights on the entire truck all the way front to back. So we've got their S8 single row light bar in the front in a clear. We've got their S2s. These are their SAE, and we stuck with our triple fog lights on each side to match the projector light on the headlight. So when these are lit up, it looks killer, matches the headlight, brings it all together. We've got our Agency 6 winch shackle. All the Agency 6 stuff, this stuff does not come in gloss black. So I do want to point out that we worked directly with them. We custom coated these to match the new gloss Icon wheels. We did our logo badges, our grab handles, all in that gloss to kind of tie the factory gloss colors together. We've got a come up solo inside. We've got good access to our winch clutch, to our button. Ties in here very nicely. Underneath here, we've showed it before, but we've got our fender tie-ins that tie into the inner fenders. We've had to do a little modifications to this one to fit the 37-inch tires. We'll go into more detail there. And as you can see, we've got we made some custom brackets for the Baja Designs rock lights underneath to aim those kind of down and out to an angle that makes sense. So the other thing while I'm down here in the front that I want to touch on is just some of the key features of this front bumper. We've gone over them before. I'll go over them again. But also I want to take note that on all of our front bumpers, we try to incorporate these same key features. One of those being obviously recovery points. We got a couple different styles here. Because the nose sticks out farther, we decided to recess them. But we do have a bevel on there for soft shackles. So all of our recovery points have that. Airflow is very crucial to us on any platform, so we always look at what the factory has done, where they're putting the airflow, where they're directing the airflow. We try to mimic it. Most of the time we are improving that. So we've got these not only aesthetically, they force air right into the intercooler. This here forces air up, so I think we're actually getting more air into the intercooler than from the factory. Openings here not only allow winch access, they also allow air around the winch into our lower radiator, so that's always very crucial for us on our front bumper designs. And also the light bars, we make sure that we do not encase those in the bumper, meaning we can actually install this from the front. So if you ever have to pull your light bar out, service it, you don't have to remove the bumper, you simply remove the light bar out of the front there. One last thing on the front is all of the safety features, the sensors. So with this low pro on this particular one, we actually don't have to touch any of the sensors in the front. We don't have to mess with the radar. We don't have to mess with the active air shutter inside. So it's pretty simple, but with our high clearance bumpers, we have to relocate. But again, every one of our bumpers on every platform we make, all of those factory features remain fully functional when we are finished. All right, so let's talk about the portals, how they work on this platform, how they play nicely with the factory auto height control. For those of you who don't know, this is a hydraulic suspension system, which means we've got 4 modes really. So we've got a low mode, which is typically used for just getting in and out of the vehicle, almost drops the vehicle down to bump stops. We've got a normal mode, that's kind of stock height where you would drive around. We've got a high 1, which I believe is about 1.5 inch lift, and we've got a high 2, which I think gets you close to 3.5 inches of lift over that normal stage. So with that, you cannot eliminate that on these new platforms, on the 600, the 700. It's tied into literally every system on the vehicle. So when we turn on our MTS, our multi-terrain select, when we turn on our crawl controls, when we do our drive modes, that system is automatically adjusting the height, but also the valving of those shocks, changing the ride to react better to the terrain you have that multi-terrain selected to. So let's show you. I'm gonna go ahead and raise it up. Right now we're sitting in the normal mode, so this is where we're driving around. So all of our lift right now is from the portals. We are 3.88 inches taller at normal mode, and all of that is at the differentials. So I'm going to turn the car on. I'm going to start it. So if you want to come over here, we've got a button on the center console here. So pretty simple, up and down. So I'm going to go ahead and select it into high 2. So this will be the highest setting. Once I shut the door, it will start adjusting the height. So pretty quick system too. It actually raises it up quite quickly. And we'll talk about the benefits to this and what we kind of real world off-road situations where this has come in handy already. Once it is done raising, I'll shut the car off. And one thing I do want to talk about too is a lot of people have the misconception that portals are kind of a rock crawler only or a trailered rig. Our Land Cruiser, you know, we've built it to do the hard trails. We do trailer it often to long distance trails, but I drive it too. I daily drive it. I've put 13,000 miles on it so far. This one, we finished it up on Friday, last Friday or Friday before. Literally that day, we left for about a 3,500 mile trip to Colorado to Cruisers on the Rockies. Most of those were highway miles, but we did do a lot of trails. We did Black Bear, we did Poughkeepsie, we ran multiple times. We really got to get it out, stretch its legs. We'll show some content on that. We went up the wall, we led the trails. Everyone that was with us was amazed with how it performed. So for one real world situation where that height control was quite nice is the wall at Poughkeepsie. There's a center line that 200s, 100s, even a lot of the Jeeps built out just can't make it. You belly out. I was able to literally lock both the front, the rear diff, the center diff. I put it in high 2 mode and we crawled right up over that. I had all the clearance in the world to clear that obstacle. We barely touched center, hardly spun a tire, just walked right up it. Without that auto height control, I would not have been able to raise it to have that clearance. But also, I don't want to drive it all the time in this tall of a mode. So it's very nice to be able to lower it down, have the stability. If you get hung up on something on your belly, knowing that I have about 3 inches of height at the push of a button to get myself unstuck or not hung up on that obstacle. So I'm pretty stoked with how that is working so far. But let's show you underneath. Let's see what we can see here. So with the suspension, we did do some modifications. So Icon, we tested out their billet uppers for the 300 series with the auto height control overseas. Those fit perfectly, they work perfectly, give us a little more smooth travel. Super stoked on that. And then also in the rear, we ran their billet lowers, but as far as modifications go to the suspension, that is the extent of it. So here you can kind of see the upright for the 74 weld portal. We've talked about them often. We'll kind of go back over some of the specs on those portals. So it's 3.88 inches tall, I believe about 2.77, something like that, inches wide. So we add 2.7 inches to each corner on the width, which is actually very minimal compared to other offerings on the market. Some of the other ones out there are like 4.5, almost 5 inches wide on each corner and tall. So just a little too much for my liking. I think this is a very good happy medium to where we can build an extreme rock crawler like our Land Cruiser 250, but also more of a mild, I say mild, we're still on 37-inch tires, but it looks like an OEM Plus when we're down in that neutral mode. So again, what a portal is it's basically, it's a 4-gear box on the hub that moves the axle up. So we're moving our hub down. So all of that lift is happening at the differential. Also, that means we keep all of our factory geometry while we're driving, all our steering angles, our CV angles, everything is totally flat as it was in the normal mode from the factory, which also means our lane keep assist, our radar cruise, everything functions. When you drive this, it feels I mean, you feel taller, but other than that, it feels just like it did from the factory. Even had my wife drive it. This is actually her car. She drove it a couple hours the other day, said she doesn't notice any difference other than it sits higher, so it drives great. So you can see under here the nice billet machine. These are all made right here in California, Southern California. Everything's made here in America. Super high quality, super nice stuff. They've really dialed it in for this new platform, and we're pretty stoked to be running them and the first to have them on this vehicle. And the only other thing I forgot to mention on the portals is the 22% gear reduction. So what that means is we've got a 37-inch tire. This came stock with a 33-inch tire, so we are actually, all of our gearing is corrected. We don't have to change the differential gears for the 37-inch tire. We're actually geared a little bit taller than we were on the factory 33-inch tire. So it drives great, the gearing's great, the RPMs are great, definitely a huge plus. So effectively, there's no need to re-gear the differentials, but also with that reduction, we're taking a lot of the stress from the hub in, about 22% off of, so that gear reduction equals to a 22% stress reduction, everything from the hub in. So that means our axles, our differentials, our drive lines, our transmission. It essentially thinks we're on stock tires, which is awesome. And we've proven that on our Land Cruiser 250. We're running 40s on all stock drivetrain. And we've not had a single issue with factory parts. We've had a minor, we've had some issues with the axle shafts that has since been addressed, but now we're 4,000 miles on those with no issues. Also, I believe 74 Weld is the only ones to really get in there and get the ABS system working properly. So again, we got in, we put this on Friday, we drove 3,500 miles. 85 miles an hour, all of our systems, all of our ABS, all of our traction controls are working as they did from the factory. All right, so real quick, let's talk wheels and tires. Obviously, you know, we're big Nitto fanboys. We run them on all of our trucks. We love them. I have not had a single issue. I don't actually, one thing to note is I don't carry a spare on this. We don't have anywhere to fit a 37. Nitto is one of the few brands I'm confident in doing so. Knock on wood, I've not had a problem. We carry glue treads, tire plugs, baling wire, whatever we need to patch a tire, and I've actually never been stranded anywhere. So not that I fully recommend not carrying a spare, but in this situation I'm confident I can fix the tire in most situations. So a 37, 12.5, 18. You can fit a 17-inch wheel on these. It is tight with the brakes and doesn't really allow you to have full freedom and balance in where you put the weight. So we decided to go with an 18 Icon Recon SLX, and this is in their new, sorry, they're a little dirty, but this is the new gloss, which is what we matched all of our other gloss Agency 6 parts to, which I think tied it together quite nicely with that gloss black there. We got the gloss fenders. We got the gloss accents on our snorkels, on the mirrors, ties everything together quite nicely. This is a plus 40 offset. So that paired with the plus 2.7 inches of the portals obviously gave us some poke. So because of that, we went with a plus 50 fender flare from Artisan's Spirits in Japan. This is their carbon flare. Looks very nice. I wouldn't choose carbon if we had a choice for an off-road rig, just because they do get beat up. I'm already getting rock chips inside there. Aesthetically though, they look amazing. And you can see our poke is honestly perfect. We've got most of our tread covered, sidewall sticks out a little bit. Does a real good job of not slinging mud, rocks on the side of the vehicle, and gives it a very nice wide body stance. And it feels very planted on the road now. That extra width certainly helps. So again, moving on to the side, we've got our aluminum step slider with the full skid plate for the active height control globes. That covers everything underneath. We've got Baja Designs rock lights underneath in both corners with our same custom brackets here, angling them out and down. We've tied those. We'll talk a little bit more of how we've wired everything, but we've tied those into our courtesy light circuit. So those function as courtesy lights when you open the door, when you lock the door. Those will come on and then go off with the factory timer. We did not do our skid plates on this. So the Overtrail comes with a pretty good thick aluminum skid plate from the factory. We're gonna run those for a bit, see how they do, because honestly with the extra clearance from, I think we're sitting at like 17, 18 inches of clearance on the diffs, you just don't hit it. I have not touched the skid plates. I think only thing we touched out in Colorado is the rear bumper. So I think those factory skids will suffice for most people. If they don't, we'll go ahead and build some and then put some of our skids on here, but I want to test those out, see how they hold up. So let's move on to the snorkels. These are a pretty cool piece. Obviously, you may have seen some of the ones we've done on the GX. We did some on the LX600. These are kind of a revised version of the one for the 600. Can't really see what we've got going on behind here, but there's no, we've got one rubber fitting to connect to the air box, but otherwise this is a fully fabricated box under this fender with a sealed interface here. This is a sealed access cover to mount the snorkel. We've actually not drilled into the A-pillar at all, so obviously we had to cut a pretty big hole in the fender. But we attach it to the roof rack, and then you can see we've got edge trim here to give a nice fit to the body. But if you were to want to reverse this in the future, you don't have that A-pillar hole that most snorkels require, which was a nice touch. So these are a fully functional snorkel. We did do tests on this. Airflow tests. We hooked up our scan tool. We checked the airflows. We checked the intake temps. We checked the turbo boost, everything, monitored it, did the same loop, same drive multiple times, and we actually saw improvement over factory. So that's one thing you do want to be careful of, that we're not limiting airflow or changing the airflow from the factory. So we did see improvement on all those aspects, which was a good sign. So another thing with the snorkels is you do get a lot of noise. Some people love it, some people hate it. I honestly like it with the turbos. You get all the turbo noises through the snorkel. But this one's actually a bit quieter than some of the non-hybrid models. I think a lot of that is due to, essentially we get more noise at the low RPM loads on the other ones. With the hybrid and the gear reduction, we're putting a lot less load on that engine at low RPM. So I think we're just not requiring as much air at that low load. The electric motor's taken over. So it's a little more mild, but we still get all the cool turbo noises. With the windows up, you hardly hear it at all. If you want to hear it, crack that window a little bit, and it sounds pretty mean. Unfortunately, we don't have the exhaust on it yet. We've ordered one from GT House for the 600, so we're going to try and retrofit that. It is going to be their electric valve, so kind of a pretty aggressive exhaust system. However, when we close that valve, we will wire that into our switch panel inside. It's supposed to be only 10% louder than stock, so we're going to test that out, see how we like it. Let's go ahead and move on to what we've got going on the roof rack here. So starting in the front, we've got the Baja Designs XL Sport linkable kit. What do we got? 2, 4, 6. We got 8 lights, which fits perfect on the width of our rack. We're also able to set this down below the wind fairing. So if you run long items on your roof rack, it doesn't interfere. And actually the noise, originally we had this up a little bit higher. We lowered it down. That really quieted this down. I don't get much noticeable wind noise on it now. So pretty stoked on that. Super bright lights. We got to use them out in the desert while we were driving to Colorado. So this also has our scene light kit. We offer this for rigid and for Baja Designs now. Same brackets, these are adjustable. You can angle them straight out, angle them down. We were running 3 per side here. Agency 6 grab handles coated in the gloss black, which we also on the louvers on the snorkel kind of tied that in with the gloss as well. This was just kind of a happen chance, but kind of cool that their scene lights have a gloss bezel here. It tied it in real nicely. Up on the roof, we've got actually a little deeper Pelican. So one, we'll talk about this more, but the downside to this vehicle is cargo space. There's not a lot of it with a family. If you need the 3rd row, you got to have somewhere to put your gear. So kind of a similar setup. I'll open this up. We use the Pelican Air 1755. So this is one of their longer, deeper cases than what I run on my Land Cruiser. So it gives us a little more room. Sorry, it's a little mess in here right now, but we've got Pelican molly bags, we've got our axe, I've got radios, I've got my tire repair, I've got my straps, my tool roll from a venture tool company. All of this fits in here nicely. Also, one thing to note is if you don't have the tool roll, if you got space over here, this will fit the Morphlate compressors in, let you close this down. And then we've got their molly panel kit, super nice. This is a lighter case than the standard. This is their air case, so it's a little bit lighter. We've got our Agency 6 recovery ring, shackles, and then some messy stuff, some paper plates. Cool, we'll close that up, show you what else we got up here. One thing to note, I actually do like these latches on the air case. They're a lot easier with that 2-stage latch to keep shut. So I'm gonna pull this down actually. So this is our Star Bat. So I want to show you guys this, kind of a cool setup, fairly new company. We actually met out on a trail. I'm gonna pull this down. All right, we'll just go ahead and show you this on the ground because Lexus Toyota decided to eliminate the drop down tailgate. Otherwise we put it up there. But yeah, this is a setup for our Starlink Mini. So pretty cool, fully self-contained. It functions through the case. So your Starlink Mini clips in here. We've got our power cord. I don't have it plugged in currently. You got a little short cord here, you plug it in. So there's a lithium battery pack here. You turn it on and that will give you about 24 to 28 hours, I believe is what they told me, of runtime on this Mini. But also, we've got a power in, so it does allow pass-through charging. So I've got a circuit up on the roof. I plug it in while it's up there. It charges it while you're driving. When you turn the car off, the built-in battery takes over, can run it through the night. So literally this will run 24/7 and never draw it fully down. Pretty cool setup, stoked to be running it. So yeah, check them out, pretty awesome. All right, so let's go ahead and move around to the back. A couple things to show you back here. So we do have, one of the downsides here is the fuel tank, the fuel size, the fuel range. It's a pretty small tank, 17.9 gallons. So we do have 5 gallons of fuel up top. I forget the brand of this tank. I ordered it off Amazon. We tried to get Roto packs. Couldn't get them to ship to California in time. So I ended up buying this brand. It wasn't necessarily cheap, it was still $100. But it's a 5 gallon, and actually so far I'm liking it a little bit more. We'll see how it holds up than the Roto packs. I did use it once on our trip. We got low and needed to put it in, so it is nice to have that extra reassurance. So yeah, let's move on to the back here. We've got our Agency 6 shovel. We did not custom color match this. This is actually, I think they're flat dark earth. We just got very lucky that it's almost an identical match, slightly darker. But we were running out of convenient space on the roof to mount it to where we could easily access it. So we fabbed up this bracket here under the license plate. Turned out pretty cool, I think, easily accessible. Obviously, so this one came with the blacked out badges back here. We've got our low pro rear bumper, but it's also very high clearance. This fits the factory lines, doesn't require you to cut these sides really. You still have to do a little cutting on some of the trim pieces. This is kind of a second iteration of this bumper. I think we're gonna do one more and just try. It matches pretty nicely, but I got a few corners I wanna fine tune a little nicer. And then we've got an S2 Pro wide cornering in here for reverse, which also has the gloss bezel, and then our gloss logo badge here, and then all of our parking sensors, everything relocated. So we do maintain the factory towing receiver here. This actually has a pretty good tow rating from the factory. I forget exactly what it is, but it's over 7,000 pounds. And then we have our recovery points with the bevel. This is a hybrid bumper, so we've got aluminum wings, steel center. One thing to note on the 700, and I'm assuming the new 600s will be the same, is they have added an advanced park feature, which I believe is why we have additional parking sensors here. So now instead of just the ones in the back, we've got them on the side, which also gave us a little trouble in the front because these flares were made for an earlier 600. The flare actually covered our parking sensor, so we had to re-drill the plastics, move that. But yeah, something to note, one of the differences we have found. But let's open up the back. I'll show you what we've got back here. Okay, so personally, I do need the third row. So we've left it here. I don't need necessarily both the third row. So here's where we'll talk about some of the cons of this platform. I do find it odd that the Overtrail currently is only offered in with the third row configuration. The GX, they did the actual opposite, where you cannot get the third row in the Overtrail. So kind of a weird move. I'm not totally sure why they did that. But also, they've made it to where, so the backs are split, but the bottom is one piece. So they made it a little tougher to eliminate the third row. We will be working on a third row elimination kit that covers that hybrid battery, protects it, but also lets us mount some drawer systems back here. Right now, we're carrying our Morphlate Twin PSI Pro and the 4-hose kit. This will fit up in the container if I move some stuff around in our Pelican case, but we haven't figured, we have not found any space to mount a decent onboard compressor. We'll probably dig into it more, see if that is an option somewhere. But again, this is a great kit, super fast. Downside in this particular configuration is, as you can see, there is not a lot of space, and we're taking up almost the whole side of our cargo space here with the third row seat up. This barely fits back here. So actually we've done a few things here to even make this fit. So hard to tell, but we've fixed this plate. This used to have a shelf here to level it out when the seats are folded. And then our spare tire tools, everything were tucked. So you didn't have any of this space. So I literally couldn't fit this behind the seat, no kind of cooler, no kind of fridge. You've got this much room, nothing other than a few coats would fit back here. So this does utilize the space a little bit better. Let's talk fridges. There is not a lot of options if you need the third row for a fridge. So I ordered several just cheapo Amazon fridges, came across this one. It's meant to go in a center console. Kind of fit perfectly back here. Not big at all, but you can fit some sandwiches, some drinks in there. That paired with the cool box up front, which we'll show you, actually worked quite well for our use on that trip to Colorado. I had three of our kids in here, and it was crammed but comfortable. So one thing we will work on back here with air down gear up is I want to do a half system that goes over the seat, one of the seats, so we maintain full access of one seat, and then make it somewhat easy to remove. So stay tuned for that. I think it'll be a pretty cool setup for the guys that still need to run a third row. So electrical, we'll talk that real quick. Again, very tricky on this one because the lack of space. So there's literally, under the hood, there's not even enough room for the factory battery. So they've tucked it in this corner. And I apologize in advance, it's not bad, but it's not as clean as we would like. We're still kind of playing around with ideas back here, seeing what works best before we fine tune all of our bracketry in a kit. But we've replaced the factory battery with this Dakota Lithium 135 amp hour. So we've got a decent amount of capacity. That battery in like external size is much smaller than the factory battery, so it does leave us a little more space here. We've paired that with a Red Arc Bluetooth battery monitor, and then a low voltage cutoff. So basically how I have it set up now is we've got our auxiliary accessories wired into this 12-volt shutoff. So what that will do is let me run it when the car's not running. It'll let me run my fridge, run my cargo lights. But if the battery gets to too low of a state where it won't start the vehicle, it'll automatically shut those off. So as it sets right now, I can monitor that. So when I have a load, I can pull up the app. I can see how long I can run the fridge, my lights in its current draw before I run the battery low. So it's proving to be a pretty cool setup with the limited space we have here. So another thing we have running off of that is our Kingpin dual function lights. So these are a red and a white. We were gonna try and fit a 40-inch bar back here like we did on our Land Cruiser. Just couldn't fit it back here. There was nowhere for it to tuck. Already have limited space, so literally this little fridge wouldn't fit back here if we did it. So we decided to tuck two 12-inchers right here. They're up out of the way. I can aim them into the back of the vehicle. I can aim them out here. So once we get our fridge set up and our table, that'll give me a nice work area with the lighting. I'll show you the function here. So these ones have red, which is great for if you got a lot of bugs, keeps the bugs aren't really attracted to the red. You can change it here. So these have the built-in switch on the light, but also we ran their rotary switch, dimmer switch with another button here. So you can leave it on here, turn it off with this switch. The memory stays on the light, but also we can dim them down to a very dim setting and back up to full power. So super cool setup. I still can't believe Lexus gave us, I mean, this is a $120,000 vehicle. We've got no lighting on this hatch, hardly any lighting back here, which again is kind of wild to me, but they did not give us any hatch lighting. But luckily we got good companies like Kingpin making these killer lights, pretty easy to install to make up for that. All right, so before we get into what my thoughts are on the platform in general, pros and cons, last thing I want to show you as far as products go on this vehicle is we did do the row 180 awning. Because of the hatch, the 270s are pretty awkward to fit. So this is actually a pretty cool awning. It's freestanding, but it does have poles built in for those windy days. It opens up all the way around to the side here. I believe we've got some pictures we can add in from when we have this mounted on our 100 series, but gives you a lot of coverage. Super cool setup. But now let's move around back to the front and we'll talk about the vehicle, the trim, the platform, and what our thoughts are so far. All right, so pros and cons. So one question we get asked often is, now that we've experienced the GX and the LX, is this worth almost $40,000 more than an Overtrail GX? Originally, before I have firsthand experience with this, I would say absolutely not. Now that I'm driving it, my views have changed a little bit. So GX is a great platform. I love it, drives great. No complaints really about that, but once you get into the real Land Cruiser, the LX, the 300 series, it is very evident the quality differences. Just from shutting the door, you get that Land Cruiser feel. Cabin's quiet, everything just feels more refined. So in my opinion, if you have the funds and the budget, it is absolutely worth the additional cost from the GX. That being said, GX still amazing platform, nothing wrong with it. Arguably looks a little more rugged, but this one is certainly a step above that. But with that, let's go into some of the things I don't like. So again, we kind of talked about cargo space. That's probably the biggest one. As you can see, these are sitting on top of the hybrid battery. I really feel that not much time was spent into the design of this cargo area. So for one, from the factory, they do have a shelf here which levels the seat, but you can see up in front, you've got this big gap. So when you put cargo back here, you hit the brakes, it falls down. That was my wife's big complaint, is going grocery shopping, the bags end up in that corner. There's no real solution for that. Also, the seat back. So this is basically your floor when these are set down. I've already broke both of these just by kneeling on this seat. So I've pulled these panels off. This is cheap fiber reinforced particle board. a huge miss in my opinion. We're going to work on a solution for that, but again, on a $120,000 vehicle, I would expect a bit more out of this back here. We got USB plugs, we got cup holders, not a ton of room. Like, you're not going to fit an adult back here comfortably. This is definitely for kids or smaller kids at that. But if you need the third row, I wouldn't necessarily count on this as being a long-term option that you're going to daily drive with someone sitting back here. This would be more of a as you need it type of thing, in my opinion. We've got our battery here. I think this is the subwoofer. We've added our auxiliary plugs here in the back. You've got your jack here. And then we've put our tire tools up in our Pelican case. Those used to be down here, but we do have a 2400 watt power inverter. Pretty awesome. You can power a lot with that. Downside to that, you got to turn the button on the dash. The vehicle does have to be running, and it doesn't have a memory. So if you got something plugged into this and you are running a fridge off of that and you turn the car off, you will have to remember to hit that button again when you turn the car back on. Which is a huge miss in my opinion. It's that way on all the platforms. They have also not given us any way to tie in. We get this question often, is there any way to tie into the hybrid system battery? We've got a big battery under the seats, but no, from what we found, there is no way to do that. It's a complete standalone system. While we're talking about the hybrid system, some of the cool things there that Lexus has done that is different from my Land Cruiser 250 is, according to Lexus, this is a fully kind of standalone system. So what that means is we've got our main starter, or a standard traditional starter on the engine, and then we've got the electric starter off the hybrid system. So Lexus claims if you were to have a hybrid malfunction, or your batteries were to malfunction or go dead, need to be replaced, this will still fully drive, be fully functional, still start off of the gas engine, which I think is a very cool feature to this one that the Land Cruiser 250 does not have. So we're stoked to see that. Apparently it's supposed to cycle the main starter on the engine once in a while just to keep things moving on that. So you might notice every once in a while your starting might sound a little different. That is because it's starting off of the traditional starter on the engine. Let's go around, we'll talk about some of the other features. We'll go ahead and get in the cockpit and we'll show you what we've got there. All right. All right, so we are in the cockpit now. Let's talk about some of the features that this one has, along with kind of the last thing that we've got installed in here, which is our S-Pod. I don't know if you can see it or not. We've put that right in this corner here with the provided bracket in the kit. Actually worked quite nicely. And then the main unit is mounted under the hood. So we've got all of our lights are controlled by that, along with our power plug at the top. So from the factory, again, we've got our height control here. We've got our indicator on the dash that's going to raise and lower us. Here are the two magic buttons. So we got our rear locker, front locker, center diff here. Both of those only function in 4-low, which is pretty common for most Toyota vehicles. They did move because of the advanced park feature, which actually allows you to park this from the app. They moved to an electronic shifter. I've kind of gotten used to it, not a huge fan of it, but basically now it's a button for park. You just hold it for neutral, up for reverse, down for drive. It takes a little getting used to going into manual, like you kind of got to go down at an angle to go from manual to drive. If you go over and hold too long, it'll automatically put you in neutral, and then you have to apply the brakes to go into a gear. So again, you get used to it, but not a huge fan of that yet. We've got our electric parking brake, we've got our heated steering wheel, and heated and cooled seats. This is the park button, so basically you hit that. It's unavailable because our seat belts aren't on, but it lets you pick your parking space and actually park it from outside the vehicle or with the app. So it will parallel park for you. I've not messed with that much. I'm normally not one to use those features. Downhill / crawl. So that is our crawl control, downhill assist. We've got our MTS and our drive modes. So we can toggle through our drive modes here. This is what I was saying. We'll actually work with the suspension as well. So when we go into sport, it stiffens, lets you corner better. Sport Plus gives you better power delivery. And then you got normal, comfort, eco, and then you can actually go all the way up to custom, go in your menu and tune those drive modes, which is nice. I've played with that a little bit. Overall, I like the display on here. The dual screens take some getting used to, but this one does have your kind of height controls and your climate controls in it. So you can turn height control off, which will basically just prevent it from auto leveling the suspension as you put a load in it. Also, you use that as a service mode and go into our climate control. Takes a little getting used to, but again, once you do, it's not bad. You got the auto mode on the heated steering wheel, which is kind of cool. So when you turn the heat on, when it's cold out, it'll automatically heat that. Up here, we've got kind of weird. So we do have massaging seats, which are nice. They're kind of deep in this menu. You can pick your different settings. You turn it on. It only runs for a certain amount of time, then it turns off. You cannot adjust that setting and that time, which is a little bit weird. So again, to go back into that, you have to go back into that menu, seat controls, massage, pick your seat, turn it on. If the passenger wants to do that, I believe you have to exit out of it, go through it all again. So a little bit weird. Again, you do get used to it. Space is not great. It's about the same size as the Land Cruiser 250. However, we got a lot more stuff. The center console's larger, the door panels are larger. So I'm 6'4". I feel more crammed in this cockpit than in my Land Cruiser 250. So for taller people, definitely something you will want to sit in and see how it feels for you before you purchase it for long distance travel. And also, one thing to note is when I have this seat all the way back, there is not much leg room for kids or an adult back there. So something to consider when you're looking at this vehicle. That'll be the same for any of these smaller, I would consider this a smaller SUV. It looks big on the outside, but inside it's not too large. We do have our rear view camera here. That is up in the back window. I think this one came factory with the optional camera. We've got our view button. So kind of all the basic stuff that you would expect in the Lexus Toyota. Drivability wise, again, power delivery is amazing. The transition from hybrid boost to turbo boost is seamless. The power is great, super smooth, very easy to get up to speed, but also you got to watch your speed. It feels like you're going slow, but man, before you know it, you're up to 80, 85 miles an hour. Very comfortable to drive, very quiet inside, even with all the gear on the roof and the large mud tires. We've got our wireless charging here. Hopefully phones don't continue to get bigger, because they will. This is about as big as you can fit here. So I think that about covers it for the overview. We'll get some more miles on it. We're already at 6,200 miles since we've gotten this. 3,500 of that is at its current stage. The previous is at almost stock. And so far I've been quite impressed. There's a few little tweaks that we need to make to really make it fit our needs and be an overland vehicle. But for an all-around, comfortable, very capable, we're pretty stoked with how this turned out. So hope you guys enjoy. Like the video, subscribe if you want to see more. We'll be doing some more in-depth reviews of this as we get more miles on it.